After 7 o'clock in the evening, the hardworking people of Chicago Village were still sweating passionately in the field, as if they couldn't feel the high temperature of making people into barbecue in mid. Jiang Mianmian, who was resting by the river, was so hot that he wanted to strip naked and stay in the river for the whole summer. At this time, she misses the air conditioning of modern society very much, but in this era, let alone air conditioning, even being able to eat a popsicle is a luxury. Suddenly, a person jumped out from behind the bushes and asked in a rough voice, "Look whose girl is lazy again." Jiang Mianmian was not frightened at all, and her originally listless little face instantly bloomed with brilliance. "Dad, are you getting off work?" Of course, it could also be that her father found an excuse to slip away early. Sure enough, Zhang Chunghai waved his hand. "No, I'll come back to the thatched house, but it's fast." After resting at home for about 10 minutes, I came to look for my daughter before she came back, so as not to miss the meal. After all, there are not many meals for 3 meals a day this year, and if you miss it, you can only stay up hungry for a night. It's time to go home for dinner. Jiang Mianmian jumped up suddenly, picked up her shoes, and ran in the direction of home, her gray little back looking very cheerful and vigorous. As soon as she rushed out 2 meters, she heard her father shouting helplessly from behind, "Girl, don't you want to carry a basket?" Yes, she came out to cut hogweed. Jiang Mianmian braked sharply and turned around, and her father esced 2 long legs past her. "Your mother hid tomatoes and came back today. Whoever gets home first will eat the big one." "Dad, you're playing tricks." She hurriedly spread her feet and chased after her. The father and daughter ran wildly all the way and met other people who had come back from work at the door of their home. "Grandpa, milk!" Jiang Mianmian gasped slightly and shouted. Her white and tender little face was puffy, and she looked very cute. The old lady Zhang Giwa didn't have a good face at all, and a girl who raised so well was simply a waste of food. Jiang Mianmian doesn't care. It's enough to have parents who love her in this life. A thin woman with a shrewd face was equally dissatisfied, so she pointed to the basket and deliberately asked loudly, "Third girl, is this the hogweed you cut this afternoon?" The old lady Zhang Giwa looked over, and her face instantly pulled down. "Why did you only cut such a little bit of hogweed? It's such a small backpack, and the hogweed inside has only been laid out." Hearing her sharp questioning, Arya, who was yellow and thin, subconsciously shivered, and the sickle in her hand fell to the ground without holding it. "What is the use of a dead girl who and even hold a sickle to raise you?" Zhang Giwa raised her hand and shouted at her head, looking fierce and mean. Arya didn't dare to say anything after eating the pain, so she silently bent down and picked up the sickle. Everyone knows that the old lady is referring to Sang and Scolding, who let the boss only have such a baby girl, and he can't be easily beaten and scolded. So Zhang Shanghai was very relieved. Mom Mianmian's finger that was cut a few days ago is not yet good, and when he recovers, he can cut more. Jiang Mianmian nodded in agreement, looking very well behaved and obedient. Zhang Giwa's face was even darker. "It's such a small opening, and it's a fart. Our Lao Jiang family doesn't have such a precious person." It was completely carved out of the same mold as her lazy father, and she thought about being lazy every day. And she could go home 3 or 4 times to the thatched house after working in the field for half a day. Chapter 2 is a cheeky one, Mom is right. We rural people are not so pampered. I think my thumb was cut to the bone, and I only rested for 3 days before going to work in the field again. The shrewd and thin woman immediately added fuel to the fire. The most disliked thing about the nieces in the family is the one in front of her, not to mention being lazy and grabbing food with her 2 precious sons every day. This should be a little embarrassing for ordinary people, but Zhang Chenghai and said with a smile, "Since you are so capable, third brother and sister, I will help my niece do the work. And when Mayamian grows up, he will definitely be filial to you." Jiang Mayamian also said sweetly, "Third aunt, in the future, when I grow up, I will buy you sugar and meat every day. After a few years, the state will allow private trading, and you can make money by doing any business, and then it will be easier to eat sugar and meat every day." However, the third daughter, in-law son Lixia, didn't eat this set at all and couldn't help but roll her eyes with disdain. This girl is as lazy as her parents, and she will have to be hungry in the future, so she will buy candy and meat for her. Listening to it can make people laugh out of their big teeth. The rest of the Jiang family also thought the same way, and the Defong family should be thankful that they didn't drag them down. After the atmosphere was eerily silent for 2 seconds, Jiang Dashan, the head of the family, spoke. "Let's go wash and eat." Zhang Giwa didn't scold anymore. After all, this eldest son is a bastard. She just scolded her saliva and it was useless, and she wasted her throat. But looking at the father and daughter who rushed into the yard as soon as they heard the word eat, they still choked up. And Su Wei Niu, who had been hiding in the kitchen, also walked out, a beautiful woman with white skin and a graceful waist. Zhang Giwa was even more angry when she saw it. This daughter-in-law can't lift her hands and shoulders, and she will get sick if she does more work. She is simply marrying an ancestor and coming back. She quickly opened her eyes and patted her chest for fear that if she looked at it again, she would be angry with this family of 3. Su Weiniu walked up to her man and daughter and said softly, "Her father, daughter, you have worked hard." A pair of beautiful apricot eyes like autumn water looked at her husband and daughter, full of tender love, which made people can't help but want to pity and care. Jiang Man held her little head high and looked back with a resentful face. "Mom, my voice was loud just now. It's impossible to pretend you didn't hear." Su Wanyu's expression froze, and then she lowered her voice and said, "Let you eat the biggest tomato today. Mom, I love you to death." Jiang Mian's resentful little face instantly burst into laughter and happily hugged her mother's thigh. Su Wanyu pointed her finger at the tip of her nose and scolded with a smile. "Little slippery head." At the same time, he also took advantage of the situation and stuffed a small piece of oil residue hidden in his hand into her mouth. Jiang Mian smelled the scent of oil residue as early as when she raised her hand and opened her mouth extremely quickly, and the mother and daughter cooperated quite skillfully. Alas, I think she was also a rent-collecting little rich woman who owned 2 buildings and a commercial street. But now she is mixed to the point that she has to be sneaky to eat a piece of oil residue. Hearing her sigh, the Zueba system in her mind said, "Host, there is a golden house in the book. As long as the host goes to study and becomes a scholar, he will soon be able to live a good life." The system knows that its host is a salted fish, and it always coaxes and induces it every day. "Don't go." Zhang Mianbian decisively refused without thinking about it. Chapter 3? Girls eat leftovers. She was a scumbag in her last life, and what she didn't like the most was reading. As for the good days of big fish and big meat, when you can do business in a few years, it is not a matter of getting your hands dirty. On the other side, the second daughter in La Zhao Shawan was also talking to the second daughter, Arya. Where is your eldest sister? It's about to be eaten. And she's worried that the eldest girl won't be able to catch up. Arya said, Grandma asked the eldest sister to call the eldest brother and Jiwoo to eat. Hearing this, the expression on the second daughter-in-law's face became even more worried, afraid that the two nephews would run too far to play. If the grandson misses the meal, the mother-in-law will definitely give it to him in private. But the granddaughter can only be hungry for one night. But if the two nephews were not brought back, the mother-in-law would not let the eldest daughter eat. Fortunately, as soon as the meal started, Dea also brought back the brothers who had been playing outside for a day. And the family started eating around the table, but several girls did not eat together. In the Jiang family, girls can only be served after the elders in the family have eaten, and they eat the leftover things in front. So at this time, I can only try to smell the fragrance of the oil residue, swallow my saliva, and watch others eat. After all that can be left is dishes without oil and water. Of course, Jiang Mian is not included. In her father's words, they will only have a daughter like her in their big house, and if they want to recruit a son-in-law in the future, they must be treated the same as a boy. Otherwise, you will lose a lot. Jiang Mian also lived up to her father's expectations. And she was more fierce than the two boys when she grabbed food, and her mouth was full of oil. Seeing that she was eating with oil residue and eating quickly, Zhang Yihua immediately scolded angrily, "Eat, eat, starve to death." The only meat dish on the table was the plate of fried cabbage with oil residue, and the other dishes basically had no oil and water. She didn't name herself Jiang Mian, just pretended not to hear that she was scolding herself and her mother. That's right, although her mother Su Wanyu is a delicate woman who can't even lift a bucket of water. The speed of picking up vegetables is not slower than her, and her father, Jiang Changhai, is even more of a leader looking at the entire Shikao village. There is no one who can be faster than him, whether it is hand speed or foot strength. Looking at the three people who didn't even give her a look, Zhang Yihua's face turned black with anger. What is the big house and the family Kuiyant do the first place to eat? But no one said a word to comfort her. Even the third daughter, who was accustomed to squeezing the big house, was busy grabbing food. The old lady was only angry for 2 seconds and continued to eat. If it was later, the 3 locusts in the big room would not leave a single leaf of oily vegetables. Hiccup, I'm full. After eating 2 large bowls of wild vegetable porridge, Jiang Mian was satisfied with a full meal. Fortunately, she didn't travel a few years earlier. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be able to drink enough wild vegetable porridge. Just as I was rejoicing, I heard her milk say, "From tomorrow, Sanya and Zhaodi will follow Daya and Arya to the fields to cut rice." Jiang Mian wiped her mouth, and the old god was saying, "Milk? I am only 8 years old, and I can't do heavy work." She knew that the milk just couldn't get used to her laziness, so she looked for work for her every day. Zhang Yihua made a tiger face and said fiercely, "Your eldest sister and second sister also went to work in the fields at the age of 8, and Zhao Di is 1 year younger than you, It's all the bad things that the boss is used to, and a girl who doesn't have a handle really thinks she's a baby egg. Brother Zhang Zhao naturally didn't dare to resist his grandmother and nodded very obedient. But the second daughter-in-law felt sorry for her daughter, so she plucked up the courage to speak. But when you recruit my brother to work in the field, who will collect firewood and dig wild vegetables? Chapter 4. Mian also goes to school. I can't burn much firewood on this hot day, so it's enough for my brother to pick it up alone. Zhang Yihua opened her mouth and arranged it. Zhao Shawan's heart hurt even more. The little girl is only 5 years old this year because her nutrition can't keep up. She looks as thin as 3 or 4 years old. How can she carry so much dry firewood? She opened her mouth to beg for mercy again. But Zhang Yiwa swept over with a knife. There are so many money-losing goods, and none of them were born to our Laojiang family. One sentence made Zhao Shawan's face turn pale in an instant, as if she had been stripped naked in public, as ashamed and uneasy, because the courage born of mother's love also dissipated abruptly. Gave birth to 4 daughters in succession, but did not give birth to a son. She is sorry for Chang He and the Lao Jiang family. Her man, Zhang Cheng's honest face, also showed a look of bitterness, and he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. He also wants a son to inherit the lineage. In a remote rural village, like Shikao village, if a man does not have a son, he will be talked about everywhere, and if he has no son, he will be the last. What's the use of having a daughter? Sooner or later, they will marry into other families, and Zhang Mian was once again glad that her parents did not have this kind of patriarchal, feudal thinking. Otherwise, she really wanted to die again. It's a man's problem that he can't give birth to a son, but he blames the woman. This fucking society? Fortunately, Zhang Jihua didn't plan to continue to ask the teacher, turned her head and slapped the table and said, in short, this matter is settled. I'm not going. Zhang Miamian didn't do it and secretly screamed at her father and begged for help. But Zhang Changhai had an empty expression, not knowing where the fugue had gone. As for her mother, she knew that her father-in-law and mother-in-law didn't like her daughter-in-law, and she always pushed her own man out to attract firepower. Zhang Yihua saw that her eldest son didn't protect her cubs today, and immediately said in a cold and strong tone, if you don't go, you have to go. If you don't work, you won't have anything to eat. Our Luojiang family doesn't raise idlers. The third daughter-in-law gloated in her heart, but said with a fake smile on her face, you listen to your aunt's advice. Male babies like hard-working daughters-in-law, and the more capable you are, the more capable the son-in-law will be, the more capable and reliable. Of course, what she said was a lie in this era, except for the lazy secondary sons. Which man is willing to be a son-in-law? I can't afford to lose this man. Zhang Mian would believe her. But when she saw that her father was unreliable, she rolled her eyes and said, then the eldest brother and the second brother have to go. The eldest brother is 11 years old. The most painful thing about her milk is her 2 grandchildren, and she must be reluctant to let them suffer hardship. Sure enough, Zhang Yiwa immediately glared and said, no, Jiwa and Jiwu wants to go to school, but you don't go to school. Although the 2 grandchildren are not reading material, it is always good to decorate the boy's belly with more ink. Then Mianayan also went to school. Zhang Changhai came back to his senses and interjected. His daughter is also old enough to study. What did you say? Zhang Jiwa didn't believe her ears. The eyes of the others also looked over in unison, looking shocked, as if he was saying some kind of shocking news. Even Jiang Mian looked surprised. Her father never mentioned letting her go to school. Jiang Changhai repeated, I said, let Mian go to school too. The tone is called a breezy and bland, as if reading is as sparse and ordinary as eating and drinking. You're in the water. I actually want to spend money to let her go to school with a girl. Zhang Yiwa's voice was instantly raised, sharp and piercing. Jiang Dasheng, who was silent on the side, also frowned, but still didn't speak. Jiang Changhai plucked out his ears and said with a natural expression, if Jiwu can go to school, Mian can also go. His daughter is much smarter than his two mischievous nephews. Hearing this, the third daughter-in-law immediately jumped out. Big brother, Jiwu is going to inherit our Lao Jiang family. A money-losing goods. How can it be more expensive than her son Jin? Jiang Chengkai said confidently, we also want to pass on the ancestry of the old Jiang family. I think you're full of food just thinking about some foolish things. What kind of book does a girl read? Our family doesn't have this spare money. Zhang Yiwa sprayed at him the tuition fee and various tuition and miscellaneous fees for a year in the commune primary school add up to UA. And now one work point can only be worth 3 cents. And the tuition fee for 1 year is half a month's income of an ordinary labor force. Although life is much better now than it was a few years ago, there is still no food left in every household. Except for a few too. No one is willing to spend money to send their daughters to study with this money. It is better to buy some delicious food for your grandson. Besides, they have been parents for more than 10 years. And if they don't do a good job of calling before they get married, they will be all cheap in the future. Zhang Changhai wiped the saliva on his face, crossed their length legs, and said with a scoundrel face, since you do on't have any spare money, then Jiwen and Jiwu don't go to study. They all work in the fields at home. Fortunately, he is handsome, and he doesn't look angry when he makes such expressions and movements. Otherwise, he would have been kicked out of the house by his parents a long time ago. No Jiwen Jiwu will go to the city to be a worker in the future. The third daughter-in-law was anxious when she heard it. After all, the boss is a scoundrel, and it is really possible to stop the two nephews from going to school. The brothers followed and muttered, yes, we don't want to mud our legs. We want to go into the city and eat commercial food. And it's so fun to read. I can skip class every day and go out to climb trees and dig birds' eggs. The third child, Jia, couldn't sit still any longer and quickly spoke up to smooth things over. Mom, Sanya is still young. She should wait a few years before going to work in the fields. Big brother, the commune primary school is so far from our village. Sanya is so young and walks so slowly. It will take almost 2 hours to walk there. Jiang Mian nodded silently in her heart to show her agreement. This way, it will be good for you, me, and everyone. The academic master system that heard her inner voice, she often regretted that she had chosen the difficult mode to transform a poor student into a top student. Not only is he a poor student, he's also too lazy to even show off. Zhang Changhai waved his hand nonchalantly. Don't worry about it. I'll pick you up and drop you off at school every day. Wild boars in the mountains would occasionally come down to look for food, and he didn't want his precious daughter to be eaten by a wild boar. But the other people in Lo Jiang's family thought he was crazy. Even if the boss is fast, it would still take at least an hour to go back and forth. 2 trips a day would take almost 3 hours just to send your daughter to school. No one would believe this if you told them. Hearing this, Jiang Dashun finally spoke up. Boss, the 3rd girl is not cut out for studying. She won't be able to keep up even if you send her to school. The 3rd son's wife immediately said excitedly, "That's right. When the village held literacy classes, Sanya spent 2 months learning addition and subtraction within 20. The educated youth in the village said they had never seen such a dumb child. I was so anxious that I spoke without thinking." Jiang, Mian. Chapter 6. Very single. She was hiding her incompetence, pretending to be foolish despite her great wisdom. She was afraid that this would dampen the enthusiasm of other children in the village for learning. However, Zheng Chenghai's attitude was very single. I don't care. I'm making this clear today. Either all 3 children go to school together, or none of them go. As he spoke, he gave his 2 nephews a fierce look, which frightened the brothers so much that they screamed, "Grandma, we don't want to go to the fields. We want to go to school with our little sister, Mia." When they were young, they bullied their 3rd sister and were severely beaten by their uncle twice. The pain of their buttocks is still fresh in their memory. Seeing him scare her 2 precious grandchildren, Zhang Gihua was so angry that she rolled her eyes and walked over to pick up a broom to hit him. "I am going to beat you to death today." "You bastard! Even if you beat me to death, I will let Maya Mian go to school," Zhang Changha said as he jumped up and ran to the yard. The Jiang family was already accustomed to this scene, and no one tried to stop the fight. After all, the fight would stop once the old lady could no longer chase him. Jiang Dashan rolled a tobacco leaf and started smoking it, with his eyes lowered as if he was thinking about something. Sun Lixia didn't dare to disturb them at this time and could only sit there and worry. Instead, her husband turned his head and looked at Su Wenyu. "Sister-in-law, please persuade Big Brother. Even if you want to send the 3rd girl to school, it would be better to wait for 2 years until she is older." Su Wenyu, however, had the look of a well-behaved and obedient young wife. I will listen to your eldest brother." Zhang Shantao's mouth twitched immediately, and he wanted to say, "Stop pretending to be." He had seen her twisting her ear and scolding her brother in private more than once. Jiang Mian was deeply moved when she saw her father being chased and beaten by her mother. Her father really loved her. "But Dad, she really doesn't want to get up at 6 o'clock every morning." Especially in winter, getting up early is simply a torture. "Of course, I don't want to farm. It would be best if I could maintain the status quo." The girls from the 2nd room were full of envy. "Uncle was so nice to my..." Not only do they have to protect her from being beaten or scolded by her grandmother on a daily basis, but now they have to be sent to school like the other boys. They cannot even imagine such treatment. Zhao Shawan felt very distressed when she saw the longing and envy in her daughter's eyes. If she had sons, she would fight for her daughters even if she was scolded. Even if a girl cannot go to the city to work as a worker, she will be looked up to by her in-laws after she gets married after 2 years of education. But her belly just wasn't cooperating and she couldn't give birth to a son. Thinking that because she had no son, not only was she disliked by her in-laws, but her daughters also suffered. She couldn't help but secretly tear up. The 2nd brother was also feeling bad. Although he wanted a son, he also liked several diligent and sensible daughters. But he couldn't be as shameless as his eldest brother and make a fuss. Besides, he has more than one daughter, so he certainly can't let all of them go to school. It would be bias to let any one of them go. After a while, Jung-gi-hwa threw away the broom and sat on the ground, gasping for breath, but she didn't even touch the corner of her eldest son's clothes. Jung Dashin shook off the ash from his cigarette and said, "It's getting late. Let's all go to bed. We can talk about it tomorrow morning." "Okay. You and Mom have worked hard all day. It's time to rest early. Nothing is more important than your health." Jung Chang-hai didn't intend to insist on a result tonight. He not only went down the stairs, but also coaxed his parents. Hearing this, Jung-gi-hwa's expression eased a lot. Chapter 7. My daughter is as smart as me. Although the eldest son is a little eccentric, he still cares about the old couple. Seeing this son, Lixia cursed him in her heart as a flatterer. But at the same time, she hoped that her man could make his parents-in-law happy like her eldest brother. Well, it's not that I haven't learned to coax before, but the same words sounded natural and sincere when spoken by the eldest brother, but sounded deliberately bland when spoken by her man. Not to mention the honest and simple second brother. He couldn't even say a nice word, even if you beat him with 3 sticks. Jiang Changhai had already taken his wife and daughter to fetch water for a bath, so there was a tank of water dried at home. If it was too late, they would have to use cold water. His wife and daughter cannot take cold showers. It is bad for their health. After washing and entering the house, Su Wenyu went to take the tomatoes hidden in the cabinet, while Jiang Changhai closed the door and locked it all in one go. "My daughter, Mom will give you the reddest and sweetest tomato." Su Wenyu first took out a bunch of bright red tomatoes, her tone so gentle and loving. Jiang Mayamyan, however, showed no motherly affection at all and said, "Mom, you have to keep your word. You promised me that I would have the biggest one today." Her mother always does this to her. Fortunately, she is not really an 8-year-old child. Otherwise, she would have no idea how much food her mother would have coaxed her into giving her since she was a child, seeing that her coaxing failed. Su Wanyu instantly changed her face to one of disgust. "Your little cotton-padded jacket is not considerate at all." Although he said so much disgust, he handed over the biggest tomato. Jungmyeon took it happily and said, "Thank you, Mom. You are the best mother in the world. I will take good care of you when I get older." As she spoke, she couldn't wait to open her mouth and take a big bite. It was juicy, sweet, and sour, and her depressed mood instantly improved. Sure enough, bad mood should be cured with sweets. Don't talk while you're eating. Su Wanyu reached out and poked her bulging cheeks, then turned to look at Jung Changhai and said angrily, "Look at your daughter. She's just a little flatterer who only cares about whoever gives her milk. My daughter is smart, sweet-mouthed, and good at talking, just like me," Jung Changhai said with a look of pride. Among the 3 sons, his parents now tolerate his laziness and slacking off because, besides the fact that he is their biological son, his parents also allow him to be happy better than his 2 younger brothers since he was a child. Su Wenyu nodded. "Yes, it sounds very comforting. Who doesn't like to hear good words?" Then he handed her a tomato and said, "Dad, are you really going to send your daughter to school?" To be honest, She was also surprised today. Before this, her husband had never shown any intention of letting his daughter go to school. Jiang Changhai took the tomato, took a bite, and asked, Mayan Mian, do you want to go to school or farm? I don't want to go to school or farm. It's good like this. Now, Jiang Mayan Mian stretched comfortably in bed. Salted fish arsh. Easily satisfied? Although this family is penniless, at least they can fill their stomachs. And occasionally they can use the system to catch some wild game to supplement their income. This kind of life is much more comfortable than that of others. However, her father shook his head and said seriously, no, you must choose one. You're grown up now and eat more. The rations you were given are no longer enough for you. Even if you don't do heavy work like harvesting rice, your grandparents will definitely let you do something lighter. Otherwise, they really won't let you eat enough. Alas, if I don't scare her cruelly, his daughter won't go to school. Chapter 8. Don't be confused, Jiang Mian tilted her head, an innocent look on her fair face. Then I'll eat you and your mother. When Su Wenyu heard this, she immediately said without hesitation, no, the work points your father and I earn are not enough to feed ourselves. She only did light work, and her husband was always taking advantage of the situation, so the couple's combined daily work points were only 2 points more than her father-in-law earned alone. Although she was telling the truth, Jiang Mian still felt like an arrow had pierced her chest. She blinked and said pitifully, Mom, I'm your own daughter. How can you bear to watch me starve? Jiang Mian tilted her head, an innocent look on her fair face. Then I'll eat you and your mother. When Su Wenyu heard this, she immediately said without hesitation, no, the work points your father and I earn are not enough to feed ourselves. She only did light work, and her husband was always taking advantage of the situation. So the couple's combined daily work points were only 2 points more than her father-in-law earned alone. Although she was telling the truth, Jiang Mian still felt like an arrow had pierced her chest. She blinked and said pitifully, Mom, I'm your own daughter. How can you bear to watch me starve? How can I bear it? Su Wenyu answered in such a decisive tone. We agreed at the beginning that, as a family, everything must be fair and just. We won't bully you because you're young and give you less food, and you won't take advantage of your young age to eat us. Jiang Mian was hit by an arrow in the chest again. She really wanted to spit out a mouthful of blood to show her mother. She had clearly caught her parents cheating on her several times. It turns out that the more beautiful a woman is, the more cold-blooded and ruthless she is. Then he looked at Jiang Changhai and called out in a soft and sweet voice, Daddy? Her father is the most susceptible to this, no matter whether it is his own daughter or wife who is acting. However, Jiang Changhai just raised his hand and touched her little head, saying helplessly, My daughter, it's not that Dad doesn't love you. It's just that Dad really can't help you this time. In the past, boys in our family didn't have schooling, and they also started working in the fields at the age of 8. Of course, not including him. Seeing that acting cute and coquettish was useless, Jiang Mian finally felt an unprecedented sense of crisis and asked persistently, Is there really no other choice? Jiang Changhai thought about it and nodded. Yes, you are just like your father. If your grandma doesn't give you food, you will roll on the ground and act like a spoiled child. Forget it then. Jiang Mian suddenly slumped like a deflated ball, and the tomato in her hand no longer tasted fragrant. It is. Not that she doesn't want to roll around and act like a spoiled child, but she knows it's useless. After all, no matter how irritating and evil her father was, he was still her biological son whom she had loved for so many years, and she was just one of his many granddaughters of a different generation. The thing that a patriarchal grandmother cares least about is her granddaughter. Looking at her despairing face, Jung Chunghai said helplessly, "There are only two paths before you now. Either work or study." The system also took the opportunity to advise, "Host, farming is hard and tiring. Studying is your only way out." "Ah, it's so hard for me." Jung Mayamian rolled around on the bed with a look of pain and confusion on her face. On the other hand, the old couple of the Jung family were also upset about this matter. "You don't do any work all day long, but just think about nonsense." In our Shikao village, there is no girl who doesn't work to go to school. We are lucky enough to be able to feed them. Jung Gi-hwa started cursing as soon as she entered the house. Jang Daeshan took a few puffs of his pipe in silence before saying, "Go count how much money we have left at home." Jang Gi-hwa was shocked when she heard this. "Old man, don't be stupid. It's a waste of money for a loser to go to school." Jang Daeshan looked at her with a dull face. "If you don't let me go, can you control the boss if he goes crazy?" The eldest son would really go crazy when he got angry. He was already a grown man in his early 30s, but he could still lie on the ground and roll around like a scoundrel without any shame, making the whole village laugh at him every time. He has a lot of dignity and can't afford to lose face like this. Jung Gi-hwa choked suddenly. Obviously, she only knew what kind of person her son was, but she felt heartbroken when she thought about having to spend $2 more on tuition every year. Chapter 9. A little spoiled, Jang Daeshan continued while smoking his pipe. Besides, the eldest son probably only has this one daughter. If she goes to school for a few years, she'll be able to find a better son-in-law in the future. Except for lazy and good-for-nothing second-rate people. No family would be willing to let their son become a son-in-law unless they really could unmake a living. Not only will you be criticized by others, but you will also feel sorry for your ancestors. Jung Gi-hwa got angry whenever she mentioned this. "My eldest son, should you have gone through that stupid sterilization process without telling us? If he had a big fat boy, I would have let him go to school with Jiwon and Jiwoo without hesitation. No matter how good a live-in son-in-law is, he can't compare to a son I raised myself." When her eldest son told her that he would never be able to have children, her head exploded and she was just a little bit away from dying on the spot. Jang Daeshan was calm and composed. "Don't you know your son's temper? He's been very opinionated since he was young. Once he gets stubborn, even 10 oxen can't pull him back. He's determined to have only Sanya as his daughter, and he's determined not to have another one." Of course, Jang Gi-hwa knew it, otherwise she wouldn't have gritted her teeth and agreed to let Suwon, who couldn't do any work, enter the Jeong family. Because the eldest son doesn't like those who are diligent and capable. He only likes those who are beautiful. He doesn't like any girls in the nearby villages, and his 2 younger brothers are married, but he is still single. The old couple tried to persuade and scold him, but it was no use. People would rather remain single than get married and live with a wife. So it dragged on like this until he was 24 years old, when he had nephews and nieces. And then he met Su Wen-yu, who was sent to the countryside for reform. I fell in love with her at first sight and insisted on marrying her. Otherwise, I would be single for the rest of my life. The old couple really had no way to deal with him, so they had no choice but to marry him off. And from then on, they had another useless person. Recalling this. The old lady could unhelp but slap her thigh and cried out in anger. What sin did I commit in my previous life to give birth to such a debt collector? After howling, he said with hope, maybe in a few years the eldest brother will come to his senses and want a son. Go get the money. Jiang Dashan looked calm and did not harbor any such illusions. Even if there was, it was a few years ago. This damn thing has been spoiled by his grandparents since he was a child. Zhang Gihua had no choice but to wipe her face and go to open the box to get the money. She completely forgot that her eldest son's current personality was partly due to her spoiling him, because Zheng Chenghai is not only her first child, but also the eldest grandson of the Zheng family. Among her sisters-in-law, she is the first daughter-in-law to give birth to a grandson for the Jiang family. Because of this, her parents-in-law look up to her. Although there were more grandchildren later, the eldest son was always the one most favored by his parents. She wasn't bragging. Her eldest son had been handsome since he was young, and he was as good-looking as any other kid in town. She was sweet-mouthed and made her parents-in-law happy every day. As a result, they treated her better than their sister Zumla and often gave them some money in private. So she doted on her eldest son very much and inevitably spoiled him a little. So the other brothers and sisters went to work in the fields at the age of 8. But he was still outside every day collecting bird eggs and catching crickets when he was in his teens, and his parents-in-law indulged him. Later, when he was 14 years old, he finally agreed to go to the fields, but he couldn't stand any hard work. He would complain of being tired and want to rest after working for a while. At the end of the day, he earned less work points than her. Now there are 2 lazy guys, one big and one small. If the family is divided, I'm afraid the whole family will have nothing to lose. I've spent so much money to raise a girl, but who knows? She might run away with another man one day. Zhang Giwa counted the money with a sullen face, her heart bleeding. Knowing that she was thinking about her little girl again, Zheng Dashin closed his eyes and said nothing more. I'm going to the toilet. Zhang Mayamyan had rolled around enough, licked the tomato juice from the corner of her mouth, got out of bed, and put on her shoes. When I went out, I saw Daya and several other girls sitting in the yard, so I asked casually, "What are you doing together?" Sanya, who was holding the kerosene lamp, replied, "I'm picking out blood blisters for my second sister." When Zhang Mayamian heard this, she saw several blisters on Aria's palms, 2 of which had the skin worn off. "It's bloody and it hurts just looking at it. This is only the 2nd day of the harvest." The other girls didn't think it was a big deal, as they would occasionally get a blister or 2 while working. Daya said with a look of relief, "Aria is quite lucky." Wang Xiahua, who was harvesting grain with her, was bitten by a leech and had its blood sucked out of its leg. It took a sickle to peel off the skin along with the leech. There are many leeches in the fields, and rural people are used to them. If there is a leech on their legs, they can just slap it around gently with their hands a few times to knock it off. But Wang Xiahua was young and inexperienced, so when she saw a leech sucking blood, she reached out to pull it. The more she pulled, the tighter it sucked, and no matter how the adults swatted it, it wouldn't come off. It was too far to go back and get salt, so she could only peel it off with the skin. Zhang Mayamian shuddered at the thought of that horrifying scene. What she fears most are fleshy animals such as snakes, leeches, and caterpillars. Just looking at them will make her hair stand on end and her scalp tingle. So at this moment, she decided that she wanted to go to school. She absolutely must not have any chance of close contact with this thing, the system immediately filled the screen with flowers. Hosts, it's great that you have this awareness. It is gratifying that it is finally going to close the preschool education mode and start the great road for poor students to counterattack and become top students. I was forced to do this. Jung Myeon cried out in grief and indignation in her heart and walked into the toilet with her head hung down. Coming out of the restroom, she heard a rustling sound from the firewood pile. Her heart suddenly tightened, and she swallowed her saliva and said, "System, start the thermal imaging scan." Just as she finished speaking, her eyes turned blue, and she saw a large golden object twisting in the innermost part of the blue firewood pile. Snake. Jung Myeon immediately covered her mouth in fear, afraid that she would scream, and then ran into the house. She ran into the house with a look of shock on her face, but her voice was filled with excitement and joy. "Dad, there is a big snake in the firewood pile in the toilet." Hearing this, Jung Chung-hai, who was lying on the bed, jumped up and said, "Meat is here. Let's go catch some snakes to eat." He didn't even wear shoes. He just ran out barefoot, holding his daughter in his arms. I was afraid that if I was a step late, the meat in my mouth would fly away. "It's over. There!" Jung Myeon stood far away, poking the firewood pile lightly with a branch in her hand. When her father heard this, he pointed the shovel at the spot and hit it with a clanging sound. The snake inside was frightened and immediately twisted its body and fled in panic. Jung Myeon kept staring nervously at the golden strip in front of him, offering off-field guidance. "Dad, here it is. It's about to come out." So as soon as the unlucky big snake stuck out its head, Jung Chung-hai grabbed it 7 inches firmly and accurately. Chapter 11, I don't support you. Why are you making such a fuss so late at night instead of sleeping? Jung Gi-wa, attracted by the noise, walked over with a stern face. But the next second she smiled like a chrysanthemum. "Oh, what a fat snake." Snake. Jung Chung-hai was holding a meter-long snake and said confidently, "Mom, go light a fire. I'll skin the snake and we can roast the meat." "Okay, I'll chop some chili powder and sprinkle it on the head." The old lady walked happily to the kitchen. "We haven't eaten meat at home for more than a month, and our 2 grandsons are in the growing stage, so it's a good time for them to eat some snake meat to replenish their fat and water." When they learned they had snake meat to eat, brothers Jung Jae-win and Jung Jae-woo jumped around in the yard with joy. "Oh, meat, meat!" The girls could only smell the fragrance from afar and swallow their saliva. They usually couldn't eat the meat at home, so they simply went back home. Jung Chung-hai is very good at grilling meat, and he is generous with the seasoning, so the grilled snake meat is extremely fragrant. Even Jung Myeon, who had just eaten roasted rabbit a few days ago, couldn't help but slurp his saliva. After all, no one doesn't crave meat these days. "Son," Lixia flattered him with a fawning look on her face. "Big brother is really awesome. He has brought more meat to the family." But in his heart, he was regretting that he had not noticed the snake in the firewood pile. Otherwise, the meat would have belonged to their 3rd room. But the eldest daughter is really stupid. If it were her, she would wait until everyone in the family is asleep before catching the snake, and then close the door and eat it alone. The old lady was very pleased with this and boasted ever since he was little. The eldest son has loved to bring home snakes and birds, and he never eats them alone. Although the eldest son often makes her angry, he is also the most filial among the three sons. He always thinks about giving the old couple a share of any delicious food. You and Dad worked hard to raise us, brothers. It's my duty to be filial to you, Zhang Changhai said with a frank and honest look on his face, which made the old lady laugh out loud. Jiang Miamian had to admire her father's shamelessness, because she and her parents often ate alone outside, but they had never been caught. After a while, Jiang Changhai sprinkled chili powder on the golden roasted snake meat. It's done. It's time to eat meat. The brothers Jiwen and Jiwu immediately ran over, waiting for their uncle to share the meat. Jiang Changhai didn't even look at his two nephews. He tore off a large piece and handed it to the old lady. Mom, this is my filial piety to you and Dad. Then he took the remaining snake meat and turned and left. My daughter, let's go back to the house and eat meat. Yeah. Jiang Miamian quickly trotted after him. Son Lixia, who had been waiting eagerly for a long time, was dumbfounded. Uncle, you haven't given Jiwen and Jiwu any meat yet? They are not my children, so it is not my responsibility to raise them. Jiang Changhai said without turning his head. His tone was so righteous, Son Lixia had no way to refute this. After all, their parents were still alive, and it really didn't make sense for uncles to raise nephews. Instead, the old lady angrily scolded him. You bastard. That's also your brother's son. After hearing this, Son Lixia immediately complained to her mother-in-law with a face full of grievance. Mom, look at my eldest brother. Jiwen and Jiwu are his nephews after all. I will break pots for him in the future, but he won't even let me share a piece of meat. According to the rules passed down by our ancestors, only boys can inherit the family business, and even breaking the pot at the funeral of the elders has to be done by boys. But she didn't expect her mother-in-law's face to darken instantly, and she yelled at her, Shut up your crow mouth. The eldest son is only in his early 30s. He can still live for 70 or 80 years. The saliva sprayed all over her face, emitting a faint fishy smell. Son Lixia wiped her face, suppressing her nausea, and explained awkwardly, Mom, you misunderstood. That's not what I meant. I don't care what you mean. If you dare to curse my son again, I will skin you alive. Zhang Giwa warned viciously with glaring eyes. No matter how bad the boss is, he was born from her belly. She will fight to the death with anyone who wants to harm him. Son Lixia's scalp suddenly tightened, and she nodded hurriedly. I will never say the wrong thing again next time. She was just too angry for a moment and forgot that the most unacceptable thing for parents is to see their loved ones die. The old lady snorted coldly, then turned to her two grandsons and said with a smile, Come, let me give you some meat. On the other side, just as Jiang Miamian and his daughter reached the door, Su Wenyu couldn't wait to open it. You are finally back. I was so greedy. She put some cold cream on her face and didn't dare go out, fearing that her mother-in-law would smell it. So she waited at the door. Jyoti, who was peeking from the window, also got down from her chair and whispered, Sisters, Uncle didn't share any meat with brothers.